Okay.
Wait a minute, still says, let me try this again. All right, there we go. All right, hopefully this time it should work because, as you remember, a lot of our stuff did not make it on the air there. I had to include the lost footage there, or lost audio footage there from last night's show there.
Your volume's a little low.
Huh, I don't know why. Damn it, this motherfucking singer. You know, how my shows on pretty well on my Skype there, and as well as
Oh,
my
I can hear
on
you
my
fine. I didn't know if it was
hmm. Maybe let me turn this up a little bit here on my volume here. Will this be a lot better here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, there we go. A lot of times in the past when I was on Skype calls, the other person I was speaking to would be louder than my voice. And so what I had to do is, turn the volume down a little bit there. So I'll keep it at the 45 and that pretty much about it. That way we could hear each other pretty that well without blowing each other's eardrums out.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah,
That's,
hopefully you can hear me.
yes, I can hear you loud and clear, man. No problem at all.
Okay.
All right, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 11 of our Music Memories series here. It's Arknolia Stroke of Bean and Dr. Earl W. Brown here. And tonight for this episode, we're going to be taking a look at other British acts that have came to the U.S. to make the same path that the Beatles had helped started back in '64.
Right. And before we start, I've got four I want to mention because I left them off my list. I don't know why,
Uh-huh.
and I don't want to forget about them.
Yes.
First one is a group called The Herd.
Mm-hmm.
They actually never really made it over here, but
Oh.
they did have an impact for one reason mainly,
Oh.
and that's because their young guitarist was a guy by the name of Peter Frampton.
Oh yeah, I see now. Who later joined the band Humble Pie there
Right,
for a couple
right,
of records before striking out on his own. Now I have a list of bands who artists from the Britain there who they were involved with the British invasion music phenomena that occurred in '64 and '66 in the States. And now
right.
the artists shown in the boldface are the inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we have a few of them right now. Of course, the ones we all know like the back of our hand: the Dave Clark Five, Donovan, the Hollies, the Kings, Moody Blues, Rolling Stones, Small Faces, which featured a Steve Marriott, who would later form Humble Pie with Peter Frampton, Dusty
Right, and they
Spring.
dropped the small and became the Faces.
Yep, and they enlisted Ron Wood, who would later join the Rolling Stones, and a singer named Rod Stewart.
Right,
We also have the Yardbirds, the Zombies, the Who, and of course, the one that started it all, the Beatles.
right. And we have the other three I was going to mention is a group by the name of The Move, which later morphed into ELO,
Yep,
Electric Light Orchestra.
yes. Yeah, I
And
was listening to the first. I have the first record downloaded on my phone here. Pretty interesting stuff. It's not just what will later evolve into the Jeff Lynne's ELO sound there. He would later write all the songs and produce all the albums there.
yeah,
Back then,
that
it was
first album is totally different from the rest of them because it's mainly
very,
Roy Wood influenced.
yeah, basically. And basically, I guess it was a side project, I guess, that the band members decided to do. Now, the band members at that time was, of course, Roy Wood, Jeff Lynne, and Beth Bevan. Now, Beth and Jeff would later be the mainstays of ELLO.
Right.
And, of course, Roy Wood, I guess he decided to put together, I guess, was it a solo artist, I think it was, or another
He did
group?
that for a while. Then he formed another group called Roy Wood's Wizard.
I think I've seen that. Oh, where he
Yeah,
dressed it
they
up
were.
as a wizard.
Well,
Yeah,
the
I
funny
see it.
thing is, you can pretty much if you look at his stuff and look at his albums and things of that nature, you can see where the influence was for Rob Zombie.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty interesting there because I remember seeing this video cassette of the glam rock series with a girl that I was dating. she was playing it for me. It had featured Sweet, T Rex, Slade, and of course Roy Wood's Wizard there.
Right.
And it was doing their Christmas song. And when Wizard, there we go. I got it right now. I'm
Yeah, it's
checking
a
this.
double Z.
Okay, gotcha. And this guy had a lot of makeup on, I tell you, including the beard, mustache, and everything. Wow, this guy was something else, man. I'll tell you.
Well, like I said, if you there's one album cover that it looks like Rob Zombie
Wow, yeah.
posed actually did both of them because there's no difference.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really weird to look at because
What's
there's like 20-year difference between them.
wow? And that's like but the album covers are kind of similar. Was it his take on Hellbilly Deluxe or the Sinister Urge or something like that?
Yeah, I forget which one it was, but
Oh man,
the album covers are incredibly similar.
wow. I should probably I'm seeing what he looks like. Damn, he really went out there his way there
Yeah,
to create a new identity.
yeah, and the other thing about the move was when they did their performances, they weren't content with just like Peter Townsend wrecking a guitar.
Nope.
They would actually carry entire things out there
Oh
and
wow.
wreck them.
Oh wow.
Uh, like a car, TV sets,
Oh
whatever.
wow. And
But
cause
basically, their set was we're gonna wreck stuff while we do our songs.
that's interesting because years later, Wendy O. Williams of the Plasmatics would start wrecking stuff with her band on stage, and it started in the 1980s.
Right, right. And the move actually had a lot of pretty decent songs, I think.
Yeah, the original "Do Ya," which
Yeah,
ALO would later do on their
which
later on
actually
record.
that particular version is a lot stronger, heavier, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Stronger. It rocked a lot harder than the one the Yellow
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I know about.
And they didn't. That was on the album, I believe, "Message from the Country," which
Hmm.
that's a very good song, "Message from the Country."
I see. Yeah.
And they also did another one that was an incredibly heavy song by the name of "Brontosaurus,"
Ah,
which later Cheap Trick would cover.
I see.
And it's not metal, but boy, it's close.
Ah, it's interesting there because I don't know what the problem was that he would he that was there a lot of arguments between him and Jeff Lynne or any members that decided to leave or did they figure
I think
was
they
it
just wanted to do different things, and that
yeah
was all it was. I don't
I
think it was a case of them just, having a knockdown drag out or whatever. I think
oh
they
yeah
just had different ideas
yeah
and have wanted to do a little bit different things. The third one I wanted to mention was The Nice,
oh yeah
which you have Keith Emerson that later ended up with, well,
Emerson
Emerson,
Lake
Lake and Palmer.
Emerson Lake and Palmer, rest in peace, dude. Because
Yeah.
remember yeah. And what's kind of funny is that we also had that featured Greg Lake, who was at the time involved with King Crimson, and
Right.
Carl Palmer from a band called Atomic Rooster,
Yes.
and also played with the Crazy World of Arthur Brown.
Yeah.
And we know their signature song, which was, of course,
Wire.
later be sampled by Marilyn Manson in one of his songs later on in the 90s there. And it's kind of funny is that, a lot. I looked over the list of British bands here. There's a lot of them that I haven't really known about. Now, you mentioned Chad and Jeremy. There was Marianne Faithfull, who would later become Mick Jagger's girlfriend. The Fortunes, The Foremost, Freddie and the Dreamers, Jerry and the Pacemakers. We know Ferry Cross to Mercy. They're only a one-time hit, I guess.
Oh,
Uh,
they had more than that.
oh, really? Hermits with Peter Noon. The
They
Hollies.
had a string of them.
Oh, wow.
The Hollies had a string of them.
Oh, wow. I was because always, yeah, we knew a long, tall woman in a black dress. Also,
Uh,
the air that I breathe. Well, that was in the later in the 70s.
right. There was a lot of them before them that were,
Oh,
were
yeah.
pretty big, but we'll get to them in a second.
Oh, yeah.
Fourth group I was going to talk about was a one-hit wonder here in America, but they actually had quite a few album releases and hits in Britain, and
Wow.
that's a group by the name of Status Quo.
Yeah, I heard of them. Yes, many times.
They
They were
they did a
mentioned.
song here called "Pictures of Matchstick Men," which is actually a pretty decent song.
Oh wow.
And the album that came from has some pretty decent songs on it too. But
Hmm.
like I said, their thing was for some reason they just liked it and wanted to basically be a British band, and they were. But
Hmm.
they had some really good stuff over there that
Oh.
most of us never got to hear. Only people that had sought it out, me and anybody else would have known
Who
about
went
it.
deeper into the find what they could find, you know. We also
Right,
included on the list here Petula Clark, um, Manfred Mann, who later put together Manfred Mann's Earth Band with Chris Robinson on vocals.
right.
And we also know there are a string of Springsteen covers and a couple other tracks that he did as well.
Yeah,
And I don't know where Manfred Mann is right now. Oh, we have the Mersey Beats, Peter, Peter and Gordon, the Moody Blues, one of who's what's considered one of the first prog rock bands that out there.
yeah. Before they did what's called the Classic Seven, which
Yeah, the
is
course seven.
Days of Future Past, Seventh
Yes,
Sojourn, they had two or three hits before that. Which there's a vocalist at that time was a guy by the name of Denny Lane, which I'm sure you've heard that name before.
yes. He later joined Paul McCartney's Wings as one of their co-guitarists there. And
Right.
apparently, the story was that each member of the Moody's had their own lawyer. So I guess so. The story is. Let me look up the story about here because let me clean my hands here. On something here.
Okay.
I was doing some a little bit of work in around the house here. Apparently, they made a lot of good money with this negotiation deal with the lawyers over the rights and royalty payments of that song. And so let me look it up here. Apparently, what it was is that let me see, oh, Ozzy Osbourne, by the way, covered it in 2005 for excuse me, a cover album that he did called Undercover, and of course, Denny Lane would perform it with, and he was involved with Paul McCartney and Wings. Now, let me look it up here because I mentioned some of that very smart for the Moody's to do. Basically, now Go Now with the exclamation mark was made popularly intentionally later in 1964 by the when a English beat group from Birmingham named the Moody Blues recorded it with Denny Lane on guitar and lead vocals.
Right.
And it was originally recorded by Bessie Banks. And I guess it was recorded by Larry Banks' former wife, who we know as Bessie. A 62 demo by Bessie was first heard by songwriters and record producers Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, who
Right.
re-recorded it in late 1963, arranged by Gary Sherman and backup vocals by Dee Dee Warwick and Cissy Houston, who is, though later on is the I guess is related to the late Whitney Houston. Now, the single was first released on 64 on the Tiger record label and later reissued on the Blue Cat label, which is the R&B soul imprint of Bluebird. I think that's another record label. Her version reached the top 40 on the Cashbox R&B singles charts. And of course, later on, it was recorded by the Moody Blues, as we all know. It was from their album titled The Magnificent Moodies. It contained very elements of what would become progressive rock, such as the lush instrumentation, the innovative variations of the 50s progression, as well as strong elements that would later become hallmarks of prog rock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the second single they did before they started the Days of Future Past,
Mm-hmm.
a song
Yeah,
called Stop, which didn't do near as well, but it's a pretty decent song.
yeah. And I guess one, I guess I'm trying to
They did
find
another
out.
one called From the Bottom to My Heart.
No, because I'm trying to find out the information about the song. Because what they did is that they got their own lawyers, each of the five members, and I guess they worked out some of the deal where they was able to earn lots of money. I guess But then again, I guess since it was originally recorded by somebody else, they have to pay that person royalties just as well there. So
Yeah.
either way, the Moody's made a lot of dough with that stuff there. Something that the Animals should have thought about after writing, after doing House of the Rising Sun.
Yeah, I don't know if that was an original by them or they covered
No,
something.
it was a cover. It was
That's what
definitely
I
a
thought.
cover. Now the only thing is they did not. It does not list who originally recorded it or wrote it,
Right.
but the only thing in the Animals version was arranged by what's the name, Jim Price or Jim Rice or what are the keyboard players? I guess it
That'd be
was
Alan Price.
Alan Price. Yes, he was the one who rearranged it how it should be done and stuff. And so apparently, because he was the only person listed on the credited, he was the one getting all the money for that particular single.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that caused a lot of dismay between Eric Burden uh, and the other members there.
Yeah. Well, Alan Price eventually broke off and formed his own group,
Hmm.
but they never went anywhere in the States at all.
Oh wow!
And they did some work in Britain, but it wouldn't, stand out.
I remember the Animals did get back together back in 1982 when they released a record called Ark. They had a song called The Night, which was played a few times on the MTV. But apparently, that resentment towards Alan Price getting all the dough for the cover of House of the Rising Sun still started
Yeah.
seeping in once again.
Well, the Animals did a lot of blues type
Oh
covers.
yeah, boom boom.
Yeah.
Don't let me be misunderstood. It's my life and I do what I want. We know those songs.
We
We
got to
got to
get
get
out of
out of
this
this
place.
place. Absolutely. Which I remember David Johansen before years before he became Buster Poindexter, and after he was after the breakup of the New York Dolls, he had a solo career going on. He released this album, live album, and I guess what it was a melody of various animal songs, including "We Got to Get Out of This Place," "Don't Let Me,"
Don't let me down.
Don't Let Me Down, and It's My Life. Now, Don't Let Me Down was recorded later on when it was Eric Burden and the Animals. He decided to
Right.
move to San Francisco and put together a new version there.
And of course, they had the song San Franciscan Nights,
Yes, I remember that. And of
Help Me
course,
Girl.
yep, and of course, one of my favorites from them, Sky Pilot.
Yeah,
Which,
and if you've ever heard the actual album that came from, Twain Shall Meet,
uh-huh,
it's 7 minutes on that album.
yeah, I
The
remember
single, the single had part one on one side, and you flip it over and it had part two.
yeah,
But
and
the album has a 7.5 minute version, I believe it is.
yeah, I remember hearing that on the radio played back in the day there. It was like, wow, this is pretty interesting there.
Well, actually, there's a form of prog going on that particular album.
Yeah.
Uh, there's several. They did a song called Monterey that's on that album that they talked about the rock festival Monterey,
Ah, yeah.
and
And
then
oh,
there's several other songs that well you can hear elements of prog if you listen to it.
yes. And also, by the way, keep in mind that one of their guitarists, Andy Summers, would later put together a band of his own with a drummer named Stuart Copeland and a guy named who went by the name of Sting, and we know
Yep.
that band's name, The Police.
Yeah, and the album that followed that, I believe, was called Love Is.
Yeah, I remember seeing
Again, there was
that.
a bunch of. It was a double set of a bunch of very long songs, but it was a lot of covers. They did a version of Ring of Fire,
Ah,
To Love Somebody, and it's got a lot of elements of prog in that album.
mm-hmm.
In fact, you could almost call both those albums prog albums,
Yeah,
early prog. But they're they do a lot of things that are they did a lot of things on those two albums that are very prog like.
mm, definitely worth checking out, folks.
Oh yeah, that whole album is great.
And plus,
Or at
also we
least I
got,
like.
and plus, also, you know what? To Love Song, that was a song by the Bee Gees, if I remember. Yes,
What was the name of it?
To Love Someone.
Yes, To Love Somebody was
And
a
the
Bee
Bee
Gees song.
Gees is not included on this list because I
Well,
remember.
they were born in England, but they immigrated to Australia and then came here from Australia.
Mhm.
So technically, they're not British invasion. They're, I guess, Australian invasion. I don't know.
Something like that. But they did part of, but they did to try their hand a few times to be a part of the British invasion. They released a lot of albums in the not singles in the 1960s. But however, a lot of people often discredit them as second-rate Beatles.
Yeah, and actually, I thought they were a pretty good band when they
Yeah,
came out.
yeah, that's true.
Their
Yeah,
first single was a song called New York Mining Disaster 1941,
yeah.
which was a decent song. And of course, they did To Love Somebody. They
Words.
did Words. That's a
Yes,
great song. And
absolutely.
Holiday, which is another pretty good song. Actually, each album they released had at least three or four decent songs. Well, actually, they had a lot of good songs on some of their
Yeah,
albums.
that's true. There, they wrote a lot of good, and they continue to write good songs later on in the '70s. That's when they around that time they converted into the funk, R&B, disco groove there, and they had some good songs right there.
Yeah, of course, we'll cover that phase of the Bee Gees when we get to the 70s.
Yep.
But their early stuff, a lot of it is well crafted and pretty decent.
Now we also got to include the Spencer Davis group, which of course they're
Absolutely.
because as we all know, featured a young 16-year-old Steve Winwood on vocals and organ there.
Yep.
Give Me Some Lovin' would later be covered by a couple others artists as well. And we'll
I'm a
Libby,
Man, which we had a phenomenal cover by Chicago.
yeah, when it was known as the Chicago Transit Authority.
Right.
Excellent cover there, man. And also, as I mentioned, what the fuck was that? Oh
They
yeah,
did another song. Go ahead.
Give me some lovin'. It was recorded by the likes of a heavy metal band called Raven, as well as Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah, and they had another song called Keep On Running that was a good song.
Oh yeah,
Uh, you mentioned Chad and Jeremy.
yes.
They did their bigger songs were like Yesterday's Gone, which was a good song.
Hmm.
Summer Song. They were more kind of a mellow type rock. And Willow Weep for Me, Distant Shores.
Hmm.
That was kind of the realm they were in. And I actually remember seeing them a long time ago on television on the old Dick Van Dyke show that had Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes, I remember.
There was an episode of where they were on I guess the Carl Reiner show. I don't recall what the name of the guy was, but it
Yeah.
was Carl Reiner.
Ah,
And they had to hide him out at their house
wow.
because, the teenage girls, the way they are back then, were
Yeah,
not much different now, but,
yeah, yeah. The only difference out was when the only band that all the teenage girls were screaming for was this dumb group called One Direction, which didn't play no instruments. That's the thing that get me about the name boy band. First of all, half of the main boys are in their 20s, and they're not a band unless they have any instruments. There we go.
yeah.
The Trogs are the one who originally
Oh,
did the Wild Thing,
which has been covered by numerous people.
including the Jimi Hendrix Experience at that Monterey
Yeah,
Pop Festival. A
he's got a great cover.
monstrous version of that one. That's the one where at the end he destroys his guitar and sets it on fire there.
And they actually had some other good songs. They had one called With a Girl Like You.
Ah,
And another big hit they had that came later was Love Is All Around.
I think I remember hearing that as well. Of course, we cannot forget the band Them,
Oh, yeah.
featuring Van Morrison.
Their
Oh,
first big hit was Here Comes the Night.
mm-hmm.
They had another one called Mystic Eyes. Uh,
But the one they always will run to is, of course,
Glory.
Gloria. Gloria,
Absolutely.
which
Everybody knows that
also,
song.
like, yep, I guess Patti Smith group that did it on one of their albums. But the one that I so loved the most was the Jimi Hendrix version. Now, that was never fully released that was only released as a separate single alongside the Essential Jimi Hendrix Volume 2 back
Yeah.
in 1980.
Yeah. And then the Doors actually had a version on one of the
Yes, I
live
remember that
albums.
as well. Yeah, Alive She Cried. I mean, I guess it was a studio version. I think it was. I remember seeing that as well.
And then another group, as part of the American answer. Uh, Blues Magoos had a 6 minute version that they
Oh
kind
yeah.
of did a freak out.
Oh yeah. Of course, there we got to include this band, the Pretty Things. I've only heard the name. I haven't heard much of their music there.
There's a song called Sorrow you need to hear,
Uh huh.
and then another one called San Francisco Sorrow that you need to hear.
I see. Now, of
Those are
course,
both good songs.
we have mentioned Mary Ann Faithful, who's still around.
Yeah, the Stones actually wrote As Tears Go By for her and then decided, this is a good song. We're going to record it too.
Yeah.
But Marianne Faithfull had a pretty big hit with that, and she did another one called The Little Bird or This Little Bird or something like that. That was pretty decent.
And she was involved, heavily romantically involved with Mick Jagger around the later part of the 60s when everybody started, when it was okay for men to dress somewhat like girls at that time there. The
Yeah,
psychedelic era there.
yeah, yeah. Then another group that was big in Britain and had a couple of things that hit over here, but not major. This is a strange name, but the name of the group was Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Titch. And essentially,
I'm looking at now. I on the list right now.
they had a song called "Hold Tight" that was a really decent song that featured some pretty heavy guitar in it actually
Uh
for
huh.
that time. And they had another one called "Bend It," which was pretty decent.
Yep.
Then they had another one called "Zabadak,"
Yes.
and one called "The Legend of Xanadu," which both those songs are pretty decent too. But
Uh,
"Hold Tight" is a must listen. That's a decent song. If
yeah.
you get a chance, listen to that song because I'm pretty sure you'll like it.
Ah. And of course, included on here is the Dave Clark Five with their song "We Am All Glad All Over."
Well, if you want to listen to Dave Clark 5 hits, we could be here for the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
They had, they had like "Glad All Over," "Bits and Pieces," "Can't You See That She's Mine,"
Mm.
uh, "I Like It Like That." Uh,
You
my
know,
mind is,
your mind is slipping. This brings me up to talk about this. I've mentioned this many times before. When it comes to these satellite radios or these particular state playlists that they play at either the Goodwill stores, thrift shops, or supermarkets,
right.
they always go for the main ones. The main ones. Like when you and that's what confuses the listener. They only know the Dave Clark Five from a Glad Over, but not the other stuff that
Yeah,
you
and they had,
mentioned.
I think they had like 20 number one top 10 hits.
Yeah.
A lot of them. 19 Days, Good Time Woman. Um, they did two songs everybody knows. One of them was well, they're about 2 years apart, but they're two totally different songs with two totally different subject matters,
Yeah.
and they're both really good.
Wow. And the people out there need to dig deep into that stuff. And by the way, going back to Spencer Davis, I guess he passed away not too long ago.
I believe so, but I'm not sure of that. A lot of times you only hear about the major ones, you don't hear about the not so major ones. And actually, the Dave Clark Five, Mike Smith passed
Yeah.
just before they got inducted into the Hall of Fame, so you didn't
Wow.
get to see that,
Hold on a
which
second.
was a shame because Mike Smith was their organist, main vocalist. I say
Yeah.
main because there was other vocals being done, but he did probably 90% of them. They did At the Scene, Round and Round.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I wish I could think of it. I mean, there's a lot of them. It's hard to think of all of them. They did they did a tremendous amount of music and well done stuff too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they were good to listen to.
But
Then you mentioned Petula Clark, whatever.
Petula Clark. Yes.
Her big one, of course, was Downtown, but she had a
Oh
pretty good
yeah.
string. Uh, she had Don't Sleep in the Subway, which some comedian had a bit about that where she's talking about her singing that song and don't sleep in the subway, don't stand in the pouring rain. She says, what kind of guys is she dating?
Makes you wonder at times when people hear all these songs here
Yeah,
for the first
where did
time.
you get that?
Because
And then
sometimes,
another guy
go
that
ahead.
actually made the Hall of Fame, and I can understand it, was Donovan.
Oh
He
yeah,
released a
Donovan
lot of.
Philip Lynch. He had Sunshine Superman, Mellow Yellow, which one of the guys on this community has the same name. You ever heard of this guy,
Oh
Mellow
yeah,
Yellow?
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think he
and
probably got his name from that particular song. I'm thinking
probably the one must listen to song by Donovan.
Hurdy Gurdy
It,
Man.
and it's, yes, got some excellent guitar in that song.
Yeah, absolutely. I fell in love with that song when I first heard it. It was like one of the cool ass tunes ever there.
I mean that when they break in that fuzz guitar about a minute in, you're sitting there going, "Whoa, where did that come from?"
That is awesome, yeah. Because at that time, usually a
You
guitar
didn't hear it
solo,
much,
like guitar solo that style was not common in songs like that. There.
and it certainly wasn't in a Donovan song. But he did a lot of things like that. In fact, he was very innovative with Atlantis.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing that as well. When you think about it, there.
Yeah, and then of course he had his nonsensical songs like "There Is a Mountain."
Uh
First
huh.
there's a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is what?
Yeah.
But of all people to cover that song, the Allman Brothers did a 30-minute version of the song with no lyrics.
Oh wow. I
That is
remember.
incredible. It's on Eat a Peach.
Oh yeah, I remember. The Butthole Surfers did their version of Hurdy Gurdy Man later on. I guess it was early in the '80s or '90s there. And it was quite somewhat similar to the original in a lot of ways there.
Mm.
Uh, I
And they
think,
also did Lelania, or he did Lelania,
yeah.
which was essentially a song about a woman of the night.
Ah,
And you mentioned, I think, Jennifer Juniper, right?
Jennifer Jupiter, yes.
And Where Your Love Like Heaven.
Uh huh. I
Oh,
had his greatest hits because I looked them up on a Revolution of Rock book while I was reading from the library at my junior high school. That's when I discovered some of these other acts like Donovan, Dave Clark Five, and other stuff there.
yeah. And the greatest hits by Donovan is truly that.
Hmm.
Every song on there was a hit. Catch the Wind,
Yep.
Colors. Uh, Guy was a good artist. He really
Hmm.
was. I
And I
mean,
think
he didn't do that much downright gut rocking, but it was still pleasant songs to listen to
yeah.
and good songs.
I think he made a comeback around the 1990s under Rick Rubin's American Recordings, I guess it was. Do I
Yeah,
understand? I
yeah,
don't know if it was a big hit or whichever, but still, I guess it was after the success of Johnny Cash's comeback around that same period. They decided, let's follow up with this British artist from the 60s.
right. Then there was Georgie Fame, who did a lot of blues-based numbers. Uh, Two biggest ones was a song called "Yeah Yeah," which is pretty good, and another one called "Getaway," which
Hmm.
is good. Well, a lot of his stuff is good, but those were the two that was kind of semi-major hits in the early '60s,
Yes.
and they're very blues-based. You can kind of hear the blues in those songs.
Yes. Now we mentioned the zombies earlier I think on another program. They got to be acknowledgement for their songs "Tell Her No," "She's Not There," and "Time of the Season" there, which happened a couple of years after the British invasion started. That's when everybody started going all hippie mode there.
Well, and ironically, that album Odyssey and Oracle with "Time of the Season" was released after Argent had already left the group
Oh
and
wow.
formed Argent.
Yes, and we know the song from that they
Hold Your Head
did,
Up.
"Hold Your Head Up." Still, it was
Of
kind of
course, that
like
was 3 albums later, but yeah.
yeah, and I guess Ron Archer decided to bring back the new version of the zombies or some of the originals, from what I understand, because I remember they did a gig at the Dozy Do Club here alongside the I-45 feeder road there heading south.
Well, the I forgot the guy's name off the top of my head, but he had a guy that he pretty much associated with it, Russ Ballard, the guy that
Oh,
did voices.
oh yeah, Russ Ballard, the song that was featured in the Miami Vice episodes that we talked about last
Right.
Wednesday there. And I heard many times already. You know what? Now that you mention it, sometime when we're done with this show here, I'm going to look up that song and start listening to it again. getting the recanting the feel and the vibe I was getting when I first heard it back. I guess it was in 82, 83, I think it was, when that
Well, I
song came
pulled
out.
part of that song and made it part of my ringtone collection.
Nice.
That way when it rings and our voices that way, not to answer, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Uh,
Now, of
and the
course,
Odyssey and Oracle album is actually a good listen. There are a lot of pretty decent songs on the album.
oh,
There's
yeah.
one on there called Carousel. Well, I told you about Carousel
Yeah.
44.
Correct.
Then there's another one called Changes that's good. And then there's another one called Butcher's Tale that is good.
That's correct, yeah. Now, we also got to switch then to the Yardbirds. And we know the three famed guitar players from this band.
Yeah. And they released a lot. Well, they were definitely one of the first psychedelic groups.
Yes.
And they released a lot of charting work, songs, and their album work is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the story. Here's the story. It was from this group that the Dazed and Confused that we know from Led Zeppelin would form. The story was that when Jimmy Page was part of the group, now Jay Page has been known to take a few elements of other people's song and incorporate it into his band's music a lot
Right.
of times. Like on How Many More Times from the first Zeppelin record, they incorporated a thing called The Hunter, which was done by Booker T and the MGs.
Right.
Rearranged. It was traditionally written, but it was arranged by Jimmy Page as well. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
And then, of course, the Taurus Stairway to Heaven story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's on the fourth record, yes. We all know that. But here's the story that's kind of interesting because it made me look up this artist that was associated with that song. Jake Holmes, who was a singer, songwriter. He had this album on Capitol Records, I guess. I think it was Capitol or Tower Records.
Right.
Tower Records, if I remember. One of the songs on this album was a track called Dazed and Confused with totally different lyrics. It's an I'm dazed and confused and blah 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 and
Yeah,
stuff.
and actually, the Yardbird version is kind of different.
Kind of different, but it's in the same vocal style as Jake Holmes. Now, the story was that Page saw him play the song and told the boys, "Hey, let's do our version of it." And they only performed that live, not in the studio. There was a footage on YouTube of them doing their version on the French music television program, which name I do not know. Um,
Right.
Keith Farrell, the front man, doing the harmonica during the middle section there, while Page does his violin bow on his Telecaster there. And it sounded similar to what the Led Zeppelin version would later become, but the Led Zeppelin version would have to, of course, include different lyrics written by, I guess, was Robert Plant, I guess. Now,
Yeah.
Jake Holmes, after finding this out, decided to take, I guess he sued the Zepps for, guess it was a payment of royalties and stuff like that, for I understand. So now, you look at any Zeppelin reissue today, it'll say written by Jimmy Page, in parentheses, inspired by Jake Holmes.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and as you talk about the Yardbirds, they of course they had the song that basically Eric Clapton let the group over is "For Your Love," which was
yep,
their first general hit,
yeah,
because he wanted to be
more
in a
blues
blues band,
and
and
not
he
more
didn't consider
commercial.
that blues,
Yeah,
which is interesting because the Yardbirds kind of got away from the commercial aspect and went into the psychedelia with
yeah,
"Heart Full of Soul,"
yep.
uh,
Over
"I'm a
under,
Man," which used Ralph.
over
Oh, and over,
under,
yes,
sideways down. Remember that tune there?
yeah, and "Shapes of Things," which was a monster song.
Oh yeah, which I remember Gary Moore, who was the former guitarist of Thin Lizzy, covered on one of his records, and I guess in 1983. It was called Progressions of Power, and it was like I think it was no, it wasn't no progression. No, that was Triumph. What the fuck am I thinking, dude? I'm
Right.
talking about Victims of the Future.
Yeah.
That's the name of the album that came out at that time. I think it was in '84 that when his version came out, and it was massively huge on the radio. The song in general was production-wise, arrangements, fucking huge, Nothing
Yeah, and
more.
actually, Jeff Beck did another version when he had the Jeff Beck group with Rod Stewart.
Uh huh.
That was similar, but not exactly the same.
Um, they're
And
always
another
little
big
takes.
song by, or I say big, another pretty good song by the Yardbirds, as far as their singles and stuff go, was
Yes.
a song called Happenings 10 Years Time Ago, which was
Oh,
definitely psychedelic.
wow. Interesting there. And of course,
I
as
mean,
we know, like the back of our hands, Led Zeppelin would later emerge. And before it became Led Zeppelin, it was christened the New Yardbirds. And the
right,
story was is that Peter Grant was brought in to be the new manager after their old manager decided to resign for some oddball reason. And but he was warned that Page is someone that was a smartass. But
right.
eventually, Page and Grant hit it off pretty well. In fact, when the other Yardbirds decided, to pack it in, uh, Grant convinced the other boys, you know, let's have Page have the name Yardbirds, and therefore the new Yardbirds were formed, which later became, as a result of a remark from the Who drummer Keith Moon, Led Zeppelin.
Right.
And we know the
Yeah.
story is he said that this band would sink like a lead balloon there. And wouldn't you
Yeah.
know?
And actually, the whole Yardbirds catalog is an interesting listen, especially Roger the Engineer. That particular album is really good.
Ah,
That's got a song on there called, you probably heard it before, Lost Woman,
ah.
which they have a guitar harmonica trade off at the break. And that song was later covered by the James Gang.
Ah, nice. You know,
And that's a good listen too.
and one sad note regarding the Yardbirds, Keith Relf, their front man,
Oh
apparently
boy.
after the Yardbirds disbanded, and Page went on to do Led Zeppelin there. I guess the other members decided to do some other things. One of the members decided to become a photographer. In fact, one of the first photos he shot was for the back of the first Led Zeppelin album there. In fact, the story was Ralph was apparently swimming in this swimming pool, got out of the swimming pool, had a tune in his mind, did not dry himself off, and picked up his electric guitar and was electrocuted right there.
Yeah,
Died
it's the
instantly.
same story I heard.
Yes. And apparently, when the members of Zeppelin found out about this, this put a little bit of fear of performing while it was raining. Because
Yeah,
they was doing this show in outdoors and it started to rain, and the fearing of being electrocuted like Page's bandmate, they had to leave the stage, which caused a whole bunch of fans, to riot and toss shit and all that stuff.
yeah,
But you can't piss off your fans, but at the same time, you don't want to risk.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Because who knows what could happen? There's rock and roll's a vicious game to play, according to April Wine, and you can never know what the fuck can happen there. So
Yeah,
Zeppelin had to make sure that they were not next when it came to being electrocuted through their music there on stage or in the studio, whichever there.
and another group at that time that was had a huge hit, almost a one-hit wonder, but not quite because they'll come out again later.
Hmm.
Was Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders.
Yes, I
They
say
had a
that on the
huge hit
list
with
here.
"Game of Love," and then when Wayne Fontana left, and they simply became the Mindbenders.
Mm.
That group had a hit with "Groovy Kind of Love."
Oh yeah, which Phil Collins would later record
Yep, yep,
for the Buster soundtrack. I guess it was in 86, 80. No, it was 88.
yeah. And then you had the Fortunes, who had a big hit with a song called "You've Got Your Troubles, I've Got Mine."
Yep.
And then they followed that up later with a song called had to do with rain.
Uh-huh.
Here
Rain,
comes that
rain.
rainy day feeling again.
Um, I think I remember hearing that title. I forgot who other did. It was somebody else, I think it was.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a pretty big gap between those two songs, but I don't recall exactly how long.
uh,
And then you had Freddie and the Dreamers, who had that huge hit with a song called "I'm Telling You Now."
Hmm.
That if you ever seen them live, they do this little dance bit where Freddie's doing. Well, they actually released a song later called "Do the Freddie," which kind of
Oh,
told you how that little thing worked. And then they did another one called "You Were Made for Me," "A Little You." They had some pretty decent songs
oh
too.
yeah. Couple others I want to mention. The singer named Lulu.
Oh yeah, "Shout."
Yes, and To Serve with Love, which
Yeah,
starred Sidney Poitier, which was a black teacher in England there.
yeah, yeah. No, she's an excellent artist, I thought.
Yes. And also, we got to include this guy because this guy's still kicking it. He's still performing. And even though he dislikes it a lot, he still gets panties from various chicks being thrown at him when he
You're talking
sings.
Tom Jones, I can
Yeah.
tell. You know, what's funny
Yeah.
is his first hit was "It's Not Unusual," which was a
We
good
all
song.
know
Well,
that.
a
Yeah,
lot of his stuff was
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
But
Delilah.
oddly, my favorite song by him was "What's New Pussycat." I don't
Oh,
know
yeah,
why,
we
but I
know
like
that.
that song.
Because of the arrangements, the kind of upscale beat along with it. Of course, we cannot forget the stuff he did later on, the 80s and 90s, when the
Delilah,
Delilah, and of course, his version of Prince's Kiss with the Art of Noise.
yeah. And then "She's a Lady,"
Yep,
"Green Green Grass at Home."
yep.
Uh, oh, he had a ton of
And he
good
had
songs.
and he had. I remember watching on. I think it was on Canadian television back in Michigan. He had a TV show of his own. I understand that ran in England for a couple years.
Well, he had one here.
Oh wow, that's right. I'm not. I forgot which TV station it was on. It was on local syndication or Canadian or. I'm certainly it was not on network, but he did have.
I'm not sure. I think it was on network actually.
Oh,
But yeah, I think it was the Tom Jones hour, and it was typical of those kind of
let
shows.
me look it up here once again on the
I remember
Wikipedia.
watching the show.
All right, Tom Jones TV show. Let's see, blah 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 blah, blah. But this is Tom Jones. It ran from 69 to 1971, in total 65 color episodes. He was also nominated for a global Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a TV Series. Believe it or not, there. And
Yeah, it actually was kind of fun to watch.
yeah, it was interesting as well. Now, the show also featured comedy sketches by the Ace Trucking Company Improviso Group, featuring Fred Willard and Peter Deutsch, I think it is, Deutsch, I think it's called, Deutsch.
That's probably right. I don't remember that part of the
Deutsch.
show.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out the pronunciation of that word along because I've always had a trouble with that. Guest appearances included Nancy Sinatra, Shirley Basley, Mary Hopkins, Peter Sellers, Liza Minnelli, Janis Joplin, Cher, Dusty Springfield, who we also got to include on the list, is also included on our list there.
Dusty Springfield and Mary Hopkins.
Yep. And we
Mary
know
Hopkins had that big one. Those were the days, my friend.
that was on
That's
the
about a 5 minute song, as I remember.
yeah, and that was released on the Beatles' Apple label.
Right.
Yes, and now Dusty Springfield, she had Son of a Preacher Man, and a couple others there.
Yeah.
We know.
Before that, though, way before that,
Hmm.
she had a song called "Wishing and Hoping" that was big. "You Don't Have to Say You Love Me," "All Cried Out."
And of course, later on, she would become an initial success again with the Pet Shop Boys duet called "What Have I Done to Deserve This?" There,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, so she definitely gets a nod as well. Sadly she passed away. I forgot which year there. Now,
It's been a little while.
it has been other appearances on the Tom Jones program. Sergio Mendes, who did who was he was heavily
Brazil
involved with.
66.
Yes, I guess it was a Latin pop group, for I understand there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was signed on the Herb Alpert's label, A&M Records.
Yeah.
Ella Fitzgerald, Stevie Wonder, The Fifth Dimension, and of course, Mr. Texaco himself, Bob Hope. And I
Yep.
call him Mr. Texaco because every one of his TV shows, he would be endorsing Texaco oil all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a big spokesman for that company there, definitely.
Well, when you mentioned Jerry and the Pacemakers, you did mention Ferry Across the Mersey, which is a big one.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it was a
But they
big
did
one there.
another one called "Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying,"
Yes, now, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that, man.
and they did another one called "How Do You Do It," which I believe was written by the Beatles.
Yeah, it was given to the Beatles originally, but but the Fab Four decided, yeah, we don't like it, so they gave
They
it to
did
Jerry.
record it, but
Yeah, but they didn't really. But I don't think it was ever released. But they gave it to Jerry and the Pacemakers. It became a big hit, and I guess the boy of the Beatles are like, oh shit.
yeah, yeah, that's a pretty nice song actually. And then you got Herman's Hermits had a string of hits.
Mrs. Brown, you got a lovely daughter.
I'm into something good.
Yep, and
Ain't that just a little bit better?
yep.
Uh, don't go out into the rain, you're gonna melt.
Hmm.
Um, I can take or leave your lovin'. Uh,
I'm Henry VIII. I am. I am.
that was probably their biggest. They
Yep.
did a pretty decent cover of "End of the World."
Yep.
I mean,
Uh,
and there are others. I mean, I'm sitting here doing this from memory, so
yeah.
I know I've forgotten some. East, West,
Yes.
Dandy. Uh,
Hmm. Let's see a couple others there. I'm looking on here. The Searchers.
oh yeah, they
Yeah.
had a string.
Hmm.
Don't throw your love away.
Mm.
They had one called Bumblebee.
Ah.
What have they done to the rain?
Oh. Don't throw
Uh,
your love away. Was it later covered by Libby Newton-John, from what I understand?
I believe so. I believe
Mm.
so.
Okay, let me look it up here again. Thank goodness for Wikipedia, boys. Thank goodness for that, because when it comes to these particular topics, I have to remember, and look things up here. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see here. Don't throw your love. There we go. Don't throw your love away. Cause let me see here. It was because I had it out because I was big on Libby Newton-John, believe it or not, during her physical period, and I guess I was. Let's see here. It was originally recorded by the Orions. It was covered by the Searchers. It went #1 on the UK singles chart and on the Irish
They actually did
singles chart.
several covers.
And
They also did Love Potion #9, which is originally by, I think, the Clovers.
ah, I see there. And it doesn't list the Libby Newton-John here, so I'm thinking of probably a different title of the title of with the same title but different type of song there.
Right.
So I'm like that there. All right. So anybody, let's see. We mentioned most of the acts on here. The
Well,
Ivy
they had
League.
the Honeycombs who
Yeah,
did
and I'm looking
Have I
about
the
that right
Right,
now.
and also another one called Can't Stop, I Can't Stop,
Hmm.
which was another pretty decent song.
Now
And then you had the Hullabaloos, who basically was
got.
kind of a Buddy Holly cover type group.
I see. Yeah, they're right underneath the honeycombs here on this list here. I'm looking at the Ivy League. They're included on this list here as well. A person named Jonathan King. You
He
know,
did a song called Everyone's Gone to the Moon,
the Mersey Beats,
right?
because the Mersey
Then,
sound that was the thing at that time.
yeah, you had Billy J. Kramer in the Dakotas who did Little Children, Bad to Me,
Hmm.
uh, From a Window, Trains and Boats and Planes.
Yeah.
There's a couple others, but I can't think of them.
The swing. Let's see. We also have the Tremolos, the Undertakers, Ian Whitcomb.
Yeah, You Turn Me On and Nervous. Those are
Uh,
his two biggies.
what's this lady's name? Cilla Black, I think her name was. Is it a
Yeah,
guy?
she did one called, believe it was You're My World.
Ah, wow. These are some of the acts I never even heard about. I'm only knowing the main ones that we mentioned that we started the program with: the Animals, Beatles, Dave Cockrive, Donovan, Hollies.
Yeah,
You
I was
know,
going to say, surely you know the Hollies,
yeah,
which was
absolutely.
where Graham Nash came from.
Yeah, and later we know the band he would join later on in
Yeah,
time. The Kinks, we got to give it up to the Kinks as well because You Really Got Me was considered one of the first heavy metal songs way before it was heavy metal when you think about it.
Yeah, and all day and all the night.
Yep, it was
Tired
kind
of
of.
waiting for
I
you.
remember hearing that single when I was in school there before I went to Actually, before I went to junior high.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was discovering one of the teachers had all these singles, and I was exploring all through them, playing them here and there and there and here. One of them included, of course, the single version of "What Nights in White Satin" without the orchestra
right.
included. Everything you name it, man.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's like wow, this is pretty interesting stuff here. I never even heard of some of these acts, like Nashville Teens.
Okay, they did a cover of Tobacco Road.
Oh yeah, which
They
David
did
Lee
another one
Roth
called,
did.
yeah, and they did a song called Google Eye.
Oh, because I remember
Did,
David Lee Roth did his version for for his second solo release, "Eat 'Em and Smile" in '86. You remember
right.
hearing that?
And then Edgar Winter does a 17-minute version on his live album Roadwork, which is uh, very bluesy. I mean, you know, he's got the saxophone going in it.
Yep.
It's a good listen.
Oh yeah, definitely got to give it up to Edgar Winter and his brother Johnny there.
Right, right.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
Holly's had a string of hits too. They had Look Through Any Window, On a Carousel, and pretty
The,
decent song with banjo called Stop, Stop, Stop.
and of course, the one night that really got me into that, what really got me noticed, was of course "The Air That I Breathe," which later on become an anti-pollution commercial for the UK for a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. But that song came well after Nash had left.
Yeah. So, what is the question is, where are these majority of artists now? Where's Chad and Jeremy? Where is Petula Clark? Where is George Fame, Wayne Fontana, and the Mindbenders? Where are these acts today? Are they still performing? Have they retired from the music scene?
I imagine a lot of them have retired,
Are they working day to night, the 9 to 5 jobs,
or not at all.
or not at all, or just living off royalty checks from that one or two particular songs, or are they still did they go into different business ventures in their UK or whichever? It's interesting. Where are these acts nowadays?
Yeah,
Because I know a
and
couple of times we get these nostalgia acts throughout the summer at these amphitheaters, and most of these acts would be doing their sets, whether it's about half hour or an hour long, but to everybody out there, I was reliving good times. But for someone of my gender who grew up with the main ones, it's going to be like, okay, I'm not too sure. I think I
I don't know
recognize
who
this
these
song.
guys are. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm glad we're doing this, so I be informed of these acts, ahead of
yeah.
time.
Well, I'm hoping I get you to the point where you go out and look some of this stuff up
All
that you
right,
don't know.
yeah, definitely for
Uh,
sure. I listened to that Blood Rock song you to mention in our Halloween episode that we recorded after
so is
our
that
first.
appropriately spooky?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's kind of weird. You're coming from the point of view from someone who's been in that plane crash there. It's like,
Yeah,
wow, that's a trip. Kind of gives you a description how it feels. Kind of like reminds me of that, speech, that little thing that we used to hear in high school about, you know, the death of a teenager. Oh my God, I was. Wait a minute. There's lots of. I hear my parents crying, said, yes, that's our son or daughter, and all this because of a drunk driving accident there.
yeah. Uh, we didn't really cover Manfred Mann, but they did
Yeah,
probably one of the biggest songs around. Do a diddy diddy.
yes, and the Mighty Quinn as well later on.
Right, right.
Yes, of course we all know they would, as we mentioned, they become Manfred Mann's Earth Band and do their three hits, all written by Bruce Springsteen. Blinded by the Light, which is still played on the radio to this day on classic rock stations. Uh, Spirits in the Night. Was the Spirits in the Night? Yeah.
Yeah, Spirits of the Night.
Correct. They're a totally different version of what the Springsteen had originally did. And of course, one of my favorites was For You from 1982.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And when we get to Manfred Mann, there will be some other stuff we'll talk about too, but
Yeah.
those three are big.
Yeah. Brave thing. Well, we could talk about it right now since we're on the subject here. about
Well, yeah, but they're more '70s related,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
uh, and we still got a couple of people to talk about. We got Peter and Gordon, who
yeah.
they were strongly related to the Beatles.
Hmm.
In fact, I think it was Peter was dating Paul's sister.
Oh wow.
I believe that's I believe that's the story. But Lennon McCartney wrote a couple of songs for these guys.
I think it was,
Or
yeah.
Without Love.
Without Love. I remember reading that in a music book there. My mom got me this tab music so I could learn some of the Beatles songs on my guitar, and one of them included was that song Without Love.
Yeah,
Or World Without Love, I'm
World
thinking it
Without
was.
Love. Yeah,
Yes.
and they also did a couple others called Nobody I Know, I Go to Pieces,
Yes.
um, Lady Godiva, Knight in
Yes.
Rusty Armor,
Hmm.
and there are several others, but I just
Did he do
off
a
the top of my head.
Did he do another Lennon McCartney composition titled "I Don't Want to See You Again," or was that somebody else?
Yes.
Yes. I'm thinking the same thing because I remember seeing that song located in the tab as recorded by Peter and Gordon.
Yeah. No, they did two or three songs like that.
Ah. Now, the foremost. It's on the list up here between Freddie and the Dreamers and the Fortunes.
Yeah, that one I think they were more of a kind of like a pop type ballad
I
group.
see.
I'm not that familiar with them,
Mm.
and if they did anything earth shattering, I'd know about it.
Oh, yeah. Now, Jonathan King, I remember the name pretty much. Yeah,
Everyone's gone to the moon.
oh yeah, that's true there. And a lot of these songs were, except for a couple that you mentioned, were like one-hit wonders here in the States, I take it?
Yeah, yeah. That's the bizarre part.
Wow.
And Small Faces had some pretty decent material. They had
Yep.
one called All or Nothing.
Yep. I guess a couple others, and let's not forget, as we mentioned, Steve Marriott, who was the singer at that time, would later
Right.
put together his own band with Peter Frampton, known as Humble Pie. And from that group, Peter Frampton would later leave to form his successful solo career.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times actually.
Yeah, you
And
know,
Crispy and St. Peter's did a song called Pied Piper.
yeah, that's true there. Uh,
Swinging Blue Jeans, Hippie Hippie Shake.
yeah, yeah, hippie, which I think this Georgia Satellites covered one time, I guess.
Yeah, and then the Tremolos did one called Silence is Golden that a lot of people have covered.
Yep, that's true there. Let's see here. What's Lulu singer? I'm looking up here for some reason. I know if cause I remember if I had a, she looks a pretty looking gal. I'll tell you that there.
Yeah, and her two biggest were the ones we mentioned, To Sir with Love and Shout.
She's still together. She is 71 years old. I'm looking at
Wow.
the images her on Google Images. And let's see. Wow, she does look. She still looks good there. Believe it or not.
Huh.
Yeah, she really looks good there. Here's one up here where she celebrates her landmark birthday, the Irish singer, blah blah blah, here and there. She, wow, I guess she tried to make a comeback in the 1980s. I guess, what I understand.
Hmm.
Let me see here, a comeback, because I know Tommy James did the same thing with a song that he recorded. I guess I remember hearing it on American Bandstand one time. I guess it was Three Times Love. I guess it was.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. That guy had a string of hits too, but we'll
Yeah.
cover him in the American part.
Oh yes, definitely. Let's see. In 1981, she returned to the U.S. charts with "I Can Never Miss You More Than I Do." It was a top 20 hit that reached number two on the adult contemporary charts, despite stalling at number 62 in the UK. Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting as well. If you don't make it big on this chart, you certainly make it big on the other one. That's for shizzle. That's interesting there.
That seems to be the case for the most part with a lot of groups, other than a few here and there.
That's true. Yeah. Kind of funny. She's still kicking it today. So we got to give it a shout out to Lulu there for the work that she has done.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's still looking good. Whereas Marianne Faithful, she doesn't really look that good nowadays, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
But then again, for I understand, Marianne Faithful did a lot of drugs during her career there, if I'm
no
correct.
doubt.
Yeah, and I guess Lulu didn't really do any. I guess, if I understand.
Probably not. I don't know that for a fact, obviously, but probably not.
Because you can always tell someone still looks good in their old age by you could tell that they have never done any drugs. Period. There. Another example would have to be a Ted Nugent.
Right.
Because my mom was saying, oh, he was in his 40s and the 50s. Or wow, he still looks good for his age. Because you remember, Ted Nugent's been drug free. For how many years now?
Oh yeah, he kicked guys out that if he
Yeah,
suspected it.
yeah, exactly. And plus, well, he did
That's
say,
generally why he left the Amboy Dukes.
yeah, everybody was getting high. In fact, he was getting mocked for doing drugs. He got told off by his stepdad, don't ever do that. When he apparently smoked some hashish with the members of the MC5. And I guess when he came home, high as a kite, his stepdad at the time gave him the verbal leverage there. None of that stuff will be tolerated, period. And I guess he took heed to it.
Yeah. Yeah, every once in a while you find somebody that actually listens.
Yeah, exactly. Unlike some of the people today there,
Yeah.
sadly. Because a lot of these kids out there are so damn close-minded, unfortunately. It's kind of funny. I should mention this. Another reason why he was so anti-drug is because the issues with his ex-wife, Sandra.
Yeah.
She was a drug addict. In fact, it was her being high behind the wheel, either drunk or stoned or whichever, that led to her dying in a car wreck in 1982.
Mm.
Wow. So let's see now. Is there any
Well, we
more?
got the Stones and the Who, but we'll do their separate things on both of them.
Yeah, we could probably do the Stones on this Thursday night if you wish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I said we
And,
definitely
and
take a look.
actually, I'm thinking seriously that we maybe ought to throw the Kinks into one of their own because we didn't
Yeah,
nearly
we got
cover all
yes,
their material.
we got to include there because they released a lot of other songs hereafter, like the landmark Lola about a
Right.
transvestite.
Yeah. I mean, they were releasing stuff that was getting regular play in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, yeah, because and yeah, a lot, especially in the '80s. There, Come Dancing, State of
Right.
Confusion. One of the biggest records that they had was in 1979 called Low Budget. They had a song
Right.
about the inflation situation called Can't Get a Gallon of Gas. There was a thing called Superman.
Mm-hmm.
They had this they had this live album called One for the Road, which was
Right.
played heavily a lot. Their live version of Lola still remains a mainstay on commercial rock radio to this very day, especially with the rousing applause when Ray Davies started the opening chords to that song. Ray
Did
Davies,
that album include the live version of Celluloid Heroes?
I think so, most likely. I have heard about that album many times there.
Yeah, because that's a pretty decent song, both the live and studio versions.
Hmm. Okay.
But I think that's a group that we need to throw into their own.
Uh huh. Yeah. One for the Road. Okay. It's an album there. Let me look on here. Opening Hard Way, Catch Me Now, I'm Falling. That was a big hit on
Yeah.
commercial radio around 1979. Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Covered by
Hmm.
Van Halen. Lola, Pressure, All Day and All the Night, Misfits, Prince of Punk, Stop Your Sobbing, which the Pretenders
That's it.
later covered.
Right.
In
That's
fact,
early Kings.
yeah, and by the way, I think Chrissy Hyde from the Pretenders had a baby with Ray Davies. I
I believe
understand.
so. I
Yeah,
think so.
yes. In fact, I remember reading about it. I remember one publication says, it's like I guess it was Chrissy Hyde and Davies, with some fan saying on the shirt saying, "I'm the number one Ray Davies fan, a number one Pretenders fan, I guess it was, and it's alongside Chrissy, who was the number one Kinks fan at that time.
Right.
Yeah, wish I could fly like was it Superman? Wish I no, I wish I could fly like something. It does. It's Let me see here. There we go. Wish I could fly like somebody that doesn't cuts off at the end. National Health to the end of the day. Celluloid Heroes. Yep. You really
Yeah.
got me live. I remember that version was played a lot. Victoria, David Watts. And of course, kind of, I was wondering, of course we can't forget You Really Got Me, which of course we know Van Halen made even more bigger on their first record there.
Yeah. I think it opened the record, didn't it?
No, it was Running with the
Running with the
Devil,
Devil opened the
then
album.
Eruption, then You Really Got Me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Remember, I had that record. I remember hearing that the first Van Halen record at a relative's party with my mom, dad, sister, and their relatives and stuff. And it was like, holy cow! I love the atmosphere of this album. It's one of the best good time albums out there, next to Invasion of Your Privacy by Rat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, so
Well, I guess we'll do the Stones Thursday,
correct.
the Who Tuesday, and then the Kinks the next Thursday.
Yeah, sounds like a good option. I'm all ready for it there, definitely. Because I think we ran out of acts to cover
Then
here.
we got to go to the American side.
Yes, absolutely. The bands from the early 60s here. And we got a
Right.
few here from the city of Detroit that needs to be mentioned here. Two acts that
And
were considered, I mentioned, was proto-punk back in the day there.
yeah, and then we got a lot of bands that were Texas based.
hmm Sir Douglas Quintet, I remember you mentioned them.
Yeah. Bobby Fuller.
Yep, the Bobby
There was
Fuller
another
Four.
group from Corpus called Zachary Thax that their songs were early heavy.
hmm
They were almost metal type.
Wow, definitely.
Um, they were another pretty. And you had Mouse and the Traps.
Yep.
I I've got a list somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Blood Rock actually was from Texas.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned last night there when you told me about that song DOA. It's like, wow, interesting. A lot of great bands from Texas, A heavy metal group called Hellstar. I'm sure you may have heard of them a couple of times in the
Yeah,
past. And of course, we know the groove metal masters, Pantera.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were from Texas.
Yep. I guess it was Dallas, Arlington, if I understand. To this very day, I still want to go visit Arlington, Texas, and visit the gravesite of both Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul Abbott. I still do to this day. I've been still
Yeah.
dying to visit that particular spot.
Well, perhaps that's in the future. Who knows?
I hope so too. All right. So this coming Thursday, we will take a look at the Rolling Stones. The following Tuesday, the Who, and the next Thursday, a look at the Kinks.
Right.
And I guess that's all for today. All these other British bands that soon would follow the Beatles, and follow the British invasion there. And give a credit to all these bands that are out there, if they're still performing or not, or
Oh yeah.
deceased or still living. Let's give
Yeah.
these
Some of
guys,
them are gone, but
yeah.
you know,
And also, let's start listening to everybody out there. Let's start listening to those records out there that we both all have suggested. It definitely,
and I think the ones of you that do, you will be surprised.
absolutely, yeah. All right. Okay, so that's and it concludes episode 11, our music memory series. We will be back doing this again on Thursday, and tomorrow night we're going to be taking a look at the Twilight Zone series on our TV
Right.
memories edition there. And plus, I think that this coming Friday we'll definitely do Ray
We'll finally get
Harryhausen.
to Ray
Yes, definitely.
Harryhausen.
Yes, got to give a look into his work there.
Right.
All right. So, once again, for Arknolia and myself, you guys have a good one, and we will see you all tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. Sounds
All right. Have a good one.
good.
All right. Bye bye.